Now, there is a push for private armies, and I am so torn on private armies because I see what our United States government does, and I see how they fight wars. However, I'm a little concerned about private armies because if you had an army of 100,000 people, and I mean really trained, couldn't you take on Great Britain and probably win? I mean, if it wasn't the Allies getting involved, if the United States wouldn't get involved, but I mean, if their ally was France, you probably win faster. Eric Prince is one of those guys, and he started Blackwater. Now, Blackwater is something that has been so demonized by the press that I don't even know for sure what to believe. Unless you read a book called Civilian Warriors, the inside story of Blackwater. This is how clear this book is. If you go just to the back cover, you see an endorsement. You should read this book because we have preconceived notions about what this force is and what it means to the United States. And it's important to get the view of an individual who experienced it and dealt with it. That's John Stewart that wrote that. John Stewart changed his opinion on Blackwater because of this book, Civilian Warriors, and Eric Prince is on with us. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
I'm very good. Let's just start with just the overall concept of private armies. Why should we feel comfortable with private armies and contractors now working for the State Department?
Look, Blackwater was not a private army in any way. We were a service contractor that provided services to the U.S. government that ranged from training to aviation support, resupply, logistics, construction, and security. At no time did we ever have a standing army of people waiting around to do something. There were contractors that were contracted to the State Department, operating to the detail of a 1,000-page contract of a competitive bid, and their job was to provide bodyguard services. Or in other cases, we might be doing training the Afghan border police, or building a narcotics interdiction unit. So there's a lot of misconception. There's a reason I write about in the book. There's a whole chapter on the history of battlefield contractors in American history even. And you go back to the founding of the country. The first colonists were actually private companies listed on the London Stock Exchange, like the Jamestown and Massachusetts Bay colonies, and they hired former soldiers to protect the colony and to assist with their logistics. And I go through much of American history. Even 9 out of 10 ships taken during the American Revolution were taken by privateers, okay? Private ship, private crew, issued a hunting license. It's actually called for in the Constitution, called the Letter of Marque and Reprisal, that allowed private vessels to go after enemy vessels. So our country has done this for a long time, in some areas more than others, but contractors on the battlefields is truly as old as warfare itself.
So why is it? Because the people on Capitol Hill do not like you. I mean, some do, some don't. They don't like the idea of Blackwater. Why is it that...
Well, that's good, because most of America doesn't like them either.
I'm with them. Why is it that they're so afraid?
They shouldn't be afraid. They should look at the private sector as being able to offer a price check, okay? When you send something overnight, you used to only be able to send it via the Postal Service. Now you have FedEx, you have UPS, you have DHL, you have other private vendors that can do something that used to be a government monopoly. They can do it cheaper, better, faster, and more reliably. My point about the private sector doing some of the things around the periphery of government support, whether it's aviation maintenance, resupply, training, logistics, all those kind of things, the private sector... I mentioned a lot.
So what is it there? So what is it?
They can do it cheaper, better, faster, because we as a private operator have to meet a price. Okay?
So what is it they're afraid of? What is it they're afraid of? Just losing their power, their control, their what?
Well, I think the left doesn't like the military as it is, let alone if a private organization does it. I mean, the hard left generally does not like capitalism or the free market.
Right.
So... Thus, free market forces operating anywhere, whether it's charter schools or school choice or any kind of privatization of anything, they dig in against. So it doesn't surprise me that they would be against contractors. And my only point about contractors supporting national security is because contractors have information at their hands about what something actually costs, we can make better, more rational economic decisions. And I'll give you an example. We were hired on a competitive bid to provide helicopters to embark aboard a military sealift command ship. Okay, that's a supply ship. And we showed up to do that job with 2 helicopters and 8 guys, replacing the Navy, who was doing it with 2 helicopters and 35 guys. And for every 35 guys they had deployed, they had another 70 or more back in the States. So apples to apples, pretty clear to see who does that job cheaper. I'm not saying we're any smarter than that Navy admiral that put that program together.
No, it's a different
called
system.
For 35 or 70 or 100 people from the Bureau of Naval Personnel. Didn't have to pay for them. And when you have a free good, you tend to use a lot more of it.
It's the difference between, honestly, the Secret Service and a firm like Gavin de Becker. The Secret Service, they don't ever have to really think in many ways. All they have to do is just call for more. They just shut the street down. They just call for more backup.
They can call for more people. Right.
And they don't ever have to worry about price. And quite honestly, I think it makes you sloppy in the end.
I would agree.
Can you tell me, what do you think this phrase means from the president? He said this, and I think this is really disturbing. Can you just tell me what you think this phrase means?
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well-funded.
What do you think that means?
I have no idea what that means. Maybe he's endorsing the Second Amendment and the right of the world government.
I don't think so.
It's good to hope. Come on.
Let me switch gears and go to ISIS. We knew who these people were. We've known who they were for a very long time. The people in Benghazi that were killed, private contractors, we just left them behind, just discarded them. I think we were running guns over to Syria.
No, actually missiles.
Okay. There you go. Do you have anything on Benghazi you want to share?
No, look, the reason that annex was there is they were buying back missiles from the Libyans and shipping them to Syria.
Which was a theory of mine about 3 days into it, and just hammered to death for it. And nobody seems to care. So we know exactly. We were part of all of this. We were doing really nasty things. We left people behind, and we don't care about them at all for some reason or another. Now we have ISIS. We are dropping. We're dropping missile systems and weapons, and ISIS is getting them. We're arming the wrong people. I think we're going to try to help take down Assad, which is only going to destabilize things more. What should we be doing, Eric?
Well, if the Assad regime were to fall right now, then ISIS would be running Syria as well.
Correct.
We can do the whole post-analysis of what was done wrong that led to ISIS being in charge. But now, the people we should be supporting vigorously are the Kurds. They have yet to receive any serious weapon systems despite all the promises and assurances from the U.S. government. So these poor guys are still going head-to-head with ISIS, who captured 5 heavy divisions of American equipment, new state-of-the-art stuff, and another 3 major logistics bases worth of ammunition, including they have Stingers, they have Hellfire missiles, ISIS does, that they captured from a resupply convoy coming to Baghdad from Kuwait. So they are very well equipped to fight for years to come. The Kurds, on the other hand, are fighting with old Saddam-era stuff that they captured in the 90s, and they're completely outgunned and outmatched. They fight bravely, but it's hard to take on a fully armored vehicle with just an AK. That is not a fight you ever want to be in. So giving them serious horsepower weaponry is the first thing. Second, you've got to be able to push back the Iranian influence in Baghdad. The Iranian army, the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, is effectively running much of the Iraqi army. particularly all the Shia militias that have come in to supplement the Iraqi army. So at some point, some force is going to have to crush ISIS and prevent them from spreading, because they will spread. They are now trying to get going in Egypt. You have radical Islamists in Libya that have professed allegiance to ISIS as well, to the caliphate. So now you have Egypt with some crazies on their western boundary. They have problems in the Sinai, and this cancer will spread. You're going to have to deal with some of the primary tumors to suppress them, or they're going to continue to metastasize.
Last couple of minutes here with Eric Prince, author of Civilian Warriors, Inside Story of Blackwater. He was the guy who started Blackwater.
Eric, scant few people want to send ground troops in to deal with ISIS. But something that's been suggested fairly recently is that maybe a private army could deal with this. Maybe we send in, and you said that Blackwater wasn't a private army, but you could have it act in that capacity. Could you not? Would that work? Would something like sending Blackwater in to deal with these guys, 20,000 private contractors to deal with ISIS?
That many.
10,000?
Less.
I mean,
Less.
Even less than that.
Less than that.
So would you advocate for something like that? Would that work?
Why would it take? Why are we talking about, you have to have 30,000 troops? And you're saying we could do it for what, 5?
I would say 5. With
5,000 people.
With a good organic air package, artillery and armor. Look, ISIS flows from being an Al-Qaeda-like pure terrorism force, IEDs, ambushes. They mass their forces very quickly, up to doing company, even up to battalion-size operations. But a unit that could move on them with battalion-size operation, with armor, with artillery, with some air, and that's well supplied and will pursue them relentlessly. They're not used to standing and fighting against that level of organized force.
Why would that be a bad thing? Why would we not do that? Why would we not do that?
Well, it's ultimately a political question. I'm saying from the private sector, yes, it is very possible to do this. I know people very well who know how to organize this, and it should be an option. And that's why I talk about in the book. This is an option that's been in the toolbox of the American decision makers for a long time. It's a toolbox there. It's what happened. Look what the Flying Tigers did. They took on the Japanese Imperial Air Force over China and really stomped on them for a year before the U.S. ever got in the war, because the U.S. couldn't put troops into China to help defend China from Japan.
Eric Prince, author of Civilian Warriors. When you're in Dallas next time, please come by. I'd love to have you here and spend an hour with you.
All right. Sounds good.
Fascinating guy. Thank you very much. Civilian Warriors is the name of the book.
Fascinating stuff. He sold Blackwater, by the way, a while ago.
That's one thing I would like to get into with him at some point is, I think he was afraid of the United States government a little bit.
Well, I think he was irritated with him. I think he didn't want to have to deal with all of it.
Yeah, I think he thought, you become an enemy of the United States government and, they take off the gloves.
Yeah.
And, I think he thought, I'm not dealing with them, because when you have somebody like Blackwater who says, I'm afraid of these dudes. I'm afraid they could jump ugly. That's bad.
It was an interesting concept he talked about, though, that it seemed to be that he was suggesting that the private sector could do this job better than the government.
Yes.
No, which is that's not possible.
Or in conjunction with air cover from the government.
I like what he said about the private armies, though.
I like that.
Around the, first, the American Revolution. Mm-hmm.